matchup of North America for the entire year. Going to be 5 Blinks versus Never Lucky.
All right, so 4-5 Blinks and Volts on the Arcane Mage. Arcane is particularly powerful against Restoration Druids, although it doesn't deal the most amount of damage. It does have Spell Steal, and it costs a very low amount of mana, so you can just spam Spell Steal over and over, removing those heal over time effects that the Druids have. So I expect Volts to try to be removing as many HOTS as possible and allowing Formy and Tiki to do as much damage as they can.
Never Lucky are going to start this series off with what I would say is considered one of the strongest compositions in the game currently. Destruction, Warlock, Elemental, Shaman, and Restoration Druid. It's very durable, high damage, burst, and sustain. Everything about it is just power. And I'm curious to see how Tickle performs on that Discipline Priest. We saw the European ones falling to the pressure of the Druids. We're going to see if it's the same here in North America. Early pressure on Formy. Spelllock secured onto Tickle. Going to be setting him back just a tad bit as we see 5 Blinks positioned back at the pillar, waiting for an opportunity to strike. They have to be very careful of Packrat's Infernals, that green icon with a skull underneath his health. When that goes on cooldown with a number, he's activated it and he's going to be doing a lot of damage. It does appear to be the case that 5 Blinks are gunning down Colo, a very aggressive target choice on their part.
Yeah, but Colo, he's going to be retreating to center field so Packrats can continue to deal damage. So basically, Formy, Volts, Tiki, they want to be avoiding Packrats at all costs. The Destruction Warlock deals heavy damage with the Chaos Bolts and has a lot of control with the Fear Spam. So I think it's really going to be up to Colo and Valido to make sure they're positioned well so Packrats can actually assist them when 5 Blinks pushes in.
Colo managed to escape the initial assault, but the team of 5 Blinks have held on to that powerful cooldown arcane power, that lightning bolt below Volt's health. As soon as that has a number, it's on cooldown. He's activated it, and he's going to be doing a ton more damage. He's playing it very patient at the moment. I do like that Colo is constantly crossing the map, going from one side to the other. Whenever Formy gets on top of him, Colo then moves to the opposite side, and this is what you want to do as a healer, playing with a Destruction Warlock and an Elemental Shaman. You want to be in the open so that your teammates can assist you and basically blast the faces off your opponents when they chase you into center field. So now Colo is likely to march across the map. This will make Formy have to make a decision. Does he cross or does he hit someone closer? And typically it's safer to hit someone closer, but not the most effective. But look, Tickle, he's been caught in midfield, and this is exactly what Colo wanted. Now they can free rain damage onto him.
Yep, Tiki is going to be using his Rapture as a response to keep himself alive. And like Sid was saying, Colo and Valido, they just need to run through Packrats. He's basically the turret in the center of the map that can take them down. Never Lucky, their objective in this matchup is just to survive as long as possible. Eventually they will win the long game, I think, with the Discipline Priest on their team is not favored against a Resto Druid, especially if the game goes longer into Dampening. It becomes really difficult to heal, especially with the Atonement with Smites. You have to start spamming Shadowmans, which is very mana inefficient, and then you end up running out of mana relatively quickly.
I will say that Tiki is doing a great job against his composition to manage his mana this well, keeping up with Colo in the early game. If he can have good mana in late game and pump out a ton of damage, as Discipline Priests are known to be able to do, then they potentially have the capabilities of taking down Never Lucky. But we already see they've forced them to cross the map and they've initiated crowd control. Never Lucky trying to start an assault. Now with a Fear on Tiki is unable to heal, and Formy is getting bursted down. Pinned at the pillar is typically what you are going to be facing a Destruction Warlock. You simply cannot go toe-to-toe with the Chaos Bolts and their durability for quite that long. So it'll be constantly hit and runs from the team of 5 Blinks. They'll make a move like this on Colo, try to get as much damage as possible, but if they can't execute a kill, they will almost immediately retreat to a pillar so they can line of sight Packrats. Currently, Colo would like to look for a better position. Yes, he's going to move away from the pillar. You do not want to be standing next to anything that the enemy team can use to line of sight your Warlock.
Yeah, for an Arcane Mage as well, you kind of have to spam spell. So if you want to do significant damage, you need to be using your Arcane Blast, which you can use with Presence of Mind, but outside of that, it's difficult to deal damage, especially against a Warlock and a Shaman with Wind Shear and Spell Lock and Grounding. It is very difficult for that Arcane Mage because unlike the Frost and Fire Mage, where you have the Arcane Tree with your Polymorph, if you get locked out on an Arcane Blast, you cannot Polymorph like a Frost Mage or a Fire Mage can, and it can be really hard for that Arcane Mage to actually deal damage against a setup like this.
All right, Tiki, he's trying to decide whether or not he wants to cross the map with his team. Packrats in center field is likely to get some Chaos Bolts here. Could be devastating as we get closer to Dampening, which will inevitably close the match out as it does reduce incoming healing on both sides. But I've not seen this matchup, particularly in Battle for Azeroth, so it is kind of a toss-up as to whether or not which team has the advantage in Dampening. I would just off the textbook play say that the Restoration Druid does, but it may not actually be the case. There's been quite a lot of pressure tossed towards Colo, and we've only just stepped foot in it. He's still dangerously low, trying to be greedy with his cooldowns, but Valido's backup is going to allow him to slowly recover. But if that happens later into Dampening, Colo could easily fall. He gets caught in center field, out of bear form in a stun. Good setup here by 5 blinks, but once again, Colo getting backed up by his team is likely to survive. No, Tiki is just going aggressive, landing a double psychic scream, and was able to get removed, however, so that means that Neverlucky will now free cast, and Formy is forced to retreat, and this is the hit and run strategy against a Destruction Warlock that you need to employ. But they do manage to catch them in Inertial's Vortex, well placed by Colo. That's a ton of damage being tossed towards Tiki at the moment. Packrats gets locked out. Good teamwork from the team of 5 blinks to save Tiki, but will it be enough? He does manage to squeak around the corner and top off. Both these teams helping their healers quite effectively.
Yeah, Colo in that last exchange, he got a little bit low, but I got to critique his positioning just a little bit. I feel like he needs to stay in the open more so Packrats and Valido can help him out with hexes, with fears, with damage. That is going to be the only thing that forces 5 blinks to play defensive. If Colo's just hiding on the pillar, it's going to be easy for the Arcane Mage, Discipline Priest, and the Feral Druid to chase him and avoid damage at the same time. So Colo has to be in the open during these situations so his team can counter pressure as best as possible.
All right, 5 blinks retreating away. Tiki doing decent with his mana, but still that lead is establishing itself for the Restoration Druid. And it looks like they want to make a move. There's the hit. They're going after Colo with that bash. He can unable to heal inside of that. And immediately, as soon as it ends, jumps into bear form. Very important as a druid if you're being targeted to be in bear form as frequently as possible. Formy really just wants to get aggressive, but then he gets caught by Colo in center field in a bash of his own. Now he is unable to move or retreat. Ursul's Vortex pinning Formy in midfield. Tiki is likely to have to spend a lot of mana to heal through this damage at the moment, which is going to put them further and further behind. But Formy seems reluctant. He just keeps wanting to go after Colo, and he's really taking the brunt of that exchange to try and do it. Colo's good positioning in center field as the composition he's bringing needs to avoid line of sights or points of line of sight. Colo going towards the pillar is not the right maneuver. Actually getting caught out of bear form, trying to pre-Iron Bark, which is a nice decision by the Restoration Druid. It's typically better if you can't heal the damage in bear to use Iron Bark, activate that damage reduction, then tank the stun, and then after that you can recover. All 3 members of Neverlucky casting on Formy. Tiki in a spot to recover, but that cost him a Shadow Mend. Shadow Mend is a very expensive heal on the Discipline Priest. You only want to use that if you absolutely have to, because look at the mana already continuing to establish itself in the lead for Neverlucky.
Yep, Tiki into the full bash. Can they get any damage onto Formy? This is the Dark Soul coming in from Packrats. He's getting very aggressive here. Colo retreating to the pillar once again. Doesn't want to be behind there for too long, but you can't blame him a little bit because Volts, if he's just spamming spell steal, it's going to be hard for Colo to recover his HP. But anytime he recovers like this, I want to see him midfield so they can counter pressure. I think Tiki is probably the best target for Neverlucky. If this Discipline Priest is in the midfield, they don't have any magic damage reduction. It's a great target to hit, force him to run away because he will inevitably be taking a lot of damage.
They do manage to catch Colo in that bash. He's unable to heal, getting bursted down, but now his team, Neverlucky, able to save him with some great timed crowd control there once again by Packrats and Valido. And we are marching ever so closely into deep Dampening territory, and Tiki does not have that much mana to work with. I don't think nearly enough to be able to actually pull off a victory from this match. He's going to have to find an opportunity to drink, regenerate his mana, that blue bar below his health, so that he can spend it on more expensive spells for big pushes later on. But it's so difficult to actually get a drink against his composition with an Elemental Shaman. It's so easy to deny with Earthbind Totem and Earthquake, so it's unlikely. Tiki instead deciding to go into midfield and get some crowd control and try and get aggressive to kill Colo. They know they're on the clock. If they can't get a kill within probably the next 2 to 3 minutes, it's going to be curtains for them.
Yeah, it's going to become increasingly difficult. The problem for 5 blinks is they just have no pressure outside of Colo, so Colo just needs, he knows he's the only one that can die on this matchup, just keeps heal over time effects on himself. He gets into bear form when he needs to, never has to put hots on Packrats or Valido. Finally, a little bit of damage going out onto Valido. I think this is smart, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to take him down, especially with no crowd control on Colo whatsoever.
All right, Tiki, you've got 10% mana left. We're at 27% dampening. That's 27% healing reduced. Every time a target gets bursted down, it's more and more likely that they will never return to full health. And then things get really dangerous, and you're not going to really be able to recover. So they're trying to position and post up behind the pillar, but this is where the Earthquakes come in. This is where the Rain of Fire from the Destruction Warlock starts to just slowly whittle down the opponents. Any damage is good damage in dampening, especially at 30%. Colo's mana looks good. He's got all of his cooldowns. The entire team really does, and the threat is completely in favor of the team of Never Lucky, as would be expected. His huge burst hits Formy straight to the face. He's barely able to survive that hit. Another hit like that in a couple minutes is going to be his life, and I really don't see any opportunities for them. They've got a lot of work ahead of them. Packrat's is looking to secure the kill right here and now, going for that Infernal play. These Chaos Bolts are going to be devastating. Formy stalls one of the Chaos Bolts out. Volts buys a couple seconds as well. If Packrats can get in there and get one of these Chaos Bolts off, it could just take half of someone's health. He's desperately trying to get in line of sight, but 5 blinks are making it difficult, obviously.
Yep, 5 blinks. I just don't see their opening in this matchup. They really haven't been able to hurt anyone. We're at 34% dampening and still no damage is rolling for them. I think if they do end up losing this one, I want to see them bring in that Assassination Rogue. I think it'll be a lot more effective. The Feral Druid just can't get out the damage that he needs without being counter-pressured away too easily. Now Tiki almost completely out of mana. It does have the Dark Archangel Arcane Power available as well. So 5 blinks, they are saving all of their offensive cooldowns for one final push, but I think that final push is all that they're really going to have left.
I mean, they're going to have to think about doing it very soon, but we saw even in Europe's tournament yesterday that it's upwards of 55+% dampening required to take down these tanky Restoration Druid compositions. So, and they're not even 20% there, so will he make it is the question, really. Formy retreating away, trying to heal himself, realizing that Tiki doesn't have any mana to actually heal him, so he's trying to hold on to it, just using Power Word Solace as frequently as possible to regenerate whatever mana he can for a late stage push. But at this point, it's just looking so grim for the team of 5 blinks. They need a miracle. They need some big critical strikes if they're going to find a kill. They really need Colo to make a mistake. If they can maybe land a counter spell on one of his Nourish casts and a counter spell on a healing, or get a Skull Bash onto a Healing Surge of Valido, if they can get those interrupts timed exactly at the same second, line up the biggest crits ever in the world, maybe there's a chance that they can take down the target in time. Otherwise, this is just looking like a chokehold that Never Lucky currently have 5 blinks in.
Yeah, it does seem really scary. 5 blinks, I feel like they do have a chance with the Arcane Mage, with the spam spell steal, with enough single target damage and enough dampening. They could possibly take someone down. Cola will have to actually cast Regrowth. If he gets interrupted on those casts, if Volt does a good job with his counterspell, then they might find an opportunity here on Valido. A lot of burst damage coming in from 5 blinks. Are they going to be able to take him down? That's Astral Shift and Iron Bark. 45% dampening, 5 blinks. They're pushing in. Arcane Power not available. Formy sells his Incarnation up. Dark Archangel gets used as well. Maim now on Colo. Valido getting low. If he needs to stabilize his HP, if he can't do that, it's going to be scary, but every second 5 blinks stands in the open, Packrats gets to tear in with the Chaos Bolts and get them lower, and Tiki's going to have a really hard time recovering from that.
That was an all-in from 5 blinks. They used every aggressive cooldown to get a kill, and they didn't get it. So at this point, they're no longer a threat. This lion, the Feral Druid, is now a little kitty cat just pawing away, trying to stay alive at this point. They're in desperation. They do manage to secure some crowd control onto Colo, but Valido breaks him out with a Tremor Totem. Tiki's got absolutely no mana left. Dampening is at 50% health, and at this point, will he even be able to recover Formy back to full health? It's taking so much longer. Packrats, Validos, they're moving in. That's the Infernals being dropped down to rain terror onto 5 blinks. So Packrats gets stalled out for a few seconds. Tiki with a well-placed barrier here, protecting his team behind the pillar. Very well placed and preemptive, but there's a Stormkeeper. Valido could do devastating damage. That Sky Fury totem down. Chain Lightning's flying in. Formy taking heavy hits. Tiki's got nothing left. Formy's got nothing left. He can't even try to make a push. He gets Lightning Lassoed, Chaos Bolted, and ultimately taken down. Never Lucky with a chokehold on 5 blinks in game number 1, and it's not looking good for them at all.
And that's exactly what...
Drop a ton of burst and try and kill somebody down 100-0. And other than that, they're going to be quivering, hiding at the pillar to avoid Packrats damage throughout.
Well, 67% of you think that maybe this change is going to be enough. Let's see if 5 blinks can manage to tie this series up.
I think Formy's going to sit on Packrats the entire game. Volts, Tiki, they're going to be doing as much damage as possible while spam dispelling the heal over time effects Colo has available. Also putting Mind Controls and Polymorphs on Valido to slow down some of his damage. But a Warrior is one of the best classes in the game besides an Assassination Rogue at shutting down a Destruction Warlock and actually keeping some decent, consistent pressure on them.
All right, we can see Volts, Tiki, and Formy all hiding at the box. If they go out in the open, they're going to get blasted. But if they just sit back here with their hands tied together, they're just slowly going to get whittled down by these Rain of Fires and Earthquakes, and it's quite a difficult decision. Tiki using Smite here to heal through the damage with Atonement on his team. This is very efficient and a smart decision. You do not want to use Shadow Mend against a Restoration Druid composition, or you will just get out-mana'd too significantly. So Tiki just preempting the damage and mashing out as many Smites as possible before it hits. But we see the team of 5 Blinks pushing up towards the staircase like they want to make an aggressive push. I'm curious to see who the target is. Sharpened Blade activated. This does reduce healing, but Valido backs him up. They have to use Counterspell on Lightning Lasso. Now Counterspell isn't available for Colo, and he can spam out Nourish, and that's why this composition with the Restoration Druid is typically one of the best for a Druid, because there's so many important spells to interrupt. They can't use their interrupts on you, and you can kind of play a slow game at the pillar and out-mana your opponent. We see Maledicts committed here to Tiki, multiple. How is he going to deal with it? They tried to make an aggressive push, but now Tiki is stranded without any points of line of sight. Packrat's right on top of him, along with Valido. Multiple interrupts being secured as Tiki is forced to retreat back to the box. I can only imagine he's spending a lot of time. Nice Supernova knock up there by Volts, saving Tiki, allowing him maybe to push forward. They've activated Dark Archangel. That boosts the damage of the team of 5 Blinks. We can see Packrat's taking the brunt of that as Colo denies it with his Iron Bark and Nourish spam. If there is no counterspell for that Nourish, nobody is going to go down on the team of Never Lucky. Volts just has to bite the bullet, take the damage spells, and save that interrupt for Colo. Otherwise, there's no openings.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I feel like with this Warrior, with the strategy 5 Blinks is implementing, I think Never Lucky, they're going to have to try to figure out something a little bit quicker, because if the game goes on to 20% dampening, that Arms Warrior damage is going to really add up. Colo gets interrupted. Packrat's getting a little bit low here. Do they have the damage to take him down? Colo leaps in with a nice bash on form to slow down some of that damage. Very nicely done. Tiki retreating to the box with Volts. This is Dark Soul for Packrat. So normally when a Warlock, a Destruction Warlock pops those
Spell Reflect.
Pops those offensive cooldowns, you want to be line of sighting as much as possible. But I guess if you have Spell Reflect, you're not that scared.
I really don't like Packrat's positioning right now. I'd like to see him go down towards that purple glowing diamond on the ground where that's Shadow Side Eyes. Where he's standing right now, Volts can line of sight at the box and attack him at the same time. This is not an effective positioning for Packrats at all. I would say it's a horrible mistake where he is currently positioned. Formy can, you see how he's line of sighting on the ramp down below to avoid Valido's damage and Packrats' damage. Tiki playing in a very peculiar position though, right in midfield at the moment. I don't think that's where he wants to be, and he's getting punished quite hard for standing in that position. Mistakes being made on both sides. Tiki's gonna have to get back to the pillar. He's getting interrupted multiple times. He cannot afford to take this much damage and be forced to use Shadow Mend, or he will just never recover. Good interrupt on the Penance. They do manage to bank a couple of Shadow Mends off the back of that. They're trying to force Valido off the box. I would like to see Volts and Tiki just stay at that box if Packrat's going to give them that easy positioning, but they do tank a couple Chaos Bolts. Tiki trying to sneak away for a drink, regenerate his mana. Valido sees it, pushes up. That Fell Hunter denies it, and now Tiki is immediately going to have to go back to the boxes and start line of sighting.
Yeah, I think mana for Tiki is going to be very important, so if he can continuously sneak away, try to sit down, regenerate some of that mana, that's going to be really important, because like we kind of said, Atonement healing, which is the healing a Disciplined Priest gets when he deals damage, starts not adding up quite as much when you get into deep dampening. You have to start using the Shadow Mends. Now, 5 Blinks getting some pressure on the Packrats with an interrupt on Colo, forcing out the Iron Bark. That's actually really scary. The Maledict Trinket on the Packrats, taking him very low, but Colo able to easily dispel it and keep Packrats alive. But like I said, this matchup is a lot different than the last one we saw. We actually see good pressure on someone outside of Colo. Formy now going for a full fear. It breaks. It gets tremored by Valido, so not going to be very effective against that Elemental Shaman, who can just use that Tremor Totem to remove the fear, negating that Arms Warrior offensive cooldown.
Nice Ursul's Vortex by Colo there, pulling both Volts and Formy away from his teammates and out in the open, and that's exactly where you want him as a Destruction Warlock. Multiple Chaos Bolts flying and tons of damage. Formy dips low. Tiki denies with that barrier, but that's a powerful cooldown he may not have access to later on. He does manage to save onto other cooldowns. They didn't panic too much there and overextend their defensive lineup. Tiki's mana is doing decently well. We need to look for Volts. He's the playmaker against this composition. It's basically all on his shoulders. If he can't land a counterspell on Colo, if he doesn't have that spell steal available right at that critical moment, then almost nothing is going to be accomplished for his team, and it's up to Tiki to buy as much time as possible for Volts to find those moments. And then it's basically Formy's job to do as much damage as possible and try not to get hit by Chaos Bolt. But really, the most pressure is going to be on Volts in this matchup.
Yeah, I really like what Valido's doing. Anytime Tiki is pushing in, immediately Packrats, Valido, they try to pressure down the Discipline Priest as much as possible, and it's very effective. It forces Tiki to run away. It forces early defensive cooldowns like the Pain Suppression, like the Rapture for him to actually stay alive. Otherwise, he's going to have to use huge mana on Shadow Mend, and this way, he's forced on the box, and Never Lucky can sort of just sit back and play the positioning that they like.
All right, we've just stepped foot into Dampening. There were a couple close calls for Packrats before it, and those close calls could be kills deep into Dampening. We see Formy actually making a swap to Colo, catching him in cat form, and actually denying him from stopping Tiki's drink. Tiki got a lot of mana there. It was good teamwork by Formy to deny Colo's crossing the map and allow themselves to get at least a bit of mana moving into deep Dampening, because there has been a lot more opportunities for kills from the composition that 5 Blinks have brought in game number 2. That Arms Warrior, very important at reducing the incoming healing from these powerful Restoration Druids with the Mortal Strike effect and the Sharpened Blade, paying its weight in gold. But the weakness of bringing a Warrior is that he's kind of stranded in midfield with 2 Wizards teeing off on him, so he will take a lot of damage, and Tiki's the one that's going to have to deal with that. We do see decent pressure onto both Formy and Packrats, but with Infernals down, Packrats is going to be dealing devastation, and immediately 5 Blinks retreat.
Yeah, they're going to be running away. Like I said, you normally want to be running away from that Destruction Warlock offensive cooldowns, especially if it's the Infernals, if it's the Dark Soul. It's just too much damage for you to tank. You really can't do too much, so you just avoid all of that damage. You avoid those cooldowns the best you can by getting to the pillar, out of line of sight. And I'm sure it's especially frustrating for the Destruction Warlock, who wants to be doing lots of damage during his cooldowns, but teams, they've realized it's just way too much pressure. You can never effectively trade into it, so it's better to just run away, avoid it at all costs.
All right, Formy now leading the charge for another attack towards Packrats as Dampening gets higher and higher. One of the major changes to Destruction Warlocks in the recent patch was the addition of Demon Armor, which boosts their armor and their maximum health and makes it very difficult for melee classes such as Arms Warriors to actually penetrate through. And with the Restoration Druid buffs, they are able to just support so easily against melee classes. This is why we see Formy having such a hard time actually denting the Warlock Packrats at the moment. But if we step into deep Dampening and the Restoration Druid HOTS become less effective, then it will simply be a kill for the Warrior, as it's so easy to disrupt those Chaos Bolts. Formy trying to duck around the corner, but not able to entirely. Volt standing on top, but we see some Maledicts being activated here from the team of Never Lucky towards Formy. He's going to trade Spell Reflect to deny any follow-up damage, allow Tiki to recover. They've got Dark Archangel, they've got Arcane Power, and they've got Avatar on the side of 5 Blinks. These are 3 powerful damage increasing abilities, but they've been caught out in the open. Formy retreats away. Will he recover? He does duck out of line of sight. Volts is backing him up, but he had to use Counterspell on Packrats, which now means there's no threat for Colo. Colo can have free reign onto the enemy team as he crosses forward. Ursul's Vortex on the blink, well placed there, getting both Formy and Volts out in the open. Those Ursul's Vortex, it's very important to use that spell effectively when you're playing with 2 ranged classes. It's just a great positional advantage to pull your opponents into the open. Colo could be the playmaker later into Dampening with that ability.
Yeah, Colo gets interrupted. Packrats could take a little bit of burst now, caught into the stun. Dark Archangel gets used by Tiki. Nicely done by 5 Blinks. Packrats forced to retreat. Ironbark used by Colo as well. This is finally a little bit of pressure here for 5 Blinks off the back of that blink counterspell by Volts. They're saving the Dark Archangel to actually generate some pressure. Unfortunately, wasn't able to pull out the Unending Resolve from Packrats, that major defensive cooldown, that Warlock shield wall, but they did get the Iron Bark, which is unfortunately up in 20 seconds, so they need to try to get some more damage rolling. Colo gets interrupted once again. This could be the Unending Resolve coming in from Packrats if they have enough damage.
I mean, surprisingly, 5 Blinks have a lot more pressure, at least in this matchup. This is the first composition we've really seen, but there's a spell lock onto Tiki. He's unable to heal, and Formy dips low. He's trying to hold on to defensive cooldowns while Tiki sits through that interrupt, finally able to connect and able to hold on to cooldowns. So it's very important that Formy holds that die by the sword, those 2 crossed swords between his or below his health bar. He wants to activate that while he's aggressive and take down the Warlock so he can play out in the open against the double casters. If he's forced to use that and run away, he can't take advantage of it aggressively on top of it. But Dampening is mounting up, and that's also going to play in favor of Never Lucky. We see that Tiki's having a hard time even getting his team back to full health in this defensive position. We see Packrats dropping the Infernals, trying to get a giant Chaos Bolt, but Formy denies him. Colo jumps in to push back Formy. Now Formy in trouble. Volts rotting down. Another spell lock secured, and very smartly by Never Lucky, they're interrupting Penance and Smite. You want to interrupt those spells. They don't heal a lot, but they're mana efficient. So if you interrupt them, Tiki is forced to use Shadow Mend, and he spends a lot of mana, and when he runs out, he can't cast any more healing spells. So that's smart interrupt usage by the team of Never Lucky, playing for that chokehold, playing for the mana advantage into the late game perfectly.
Yeah, just never lucky. I feel like they got really impatient there. Colo pushed in. He got crowd controlled by the Fear because he was playing on top of them, had to trinket, had to trade out his Iron Bark. And I feel like never lucky, their game plan is just sit back, play patient. You're going to win the long game eventually. There's no reason to run in, especially when the powered barrier gets dropped. You're not going to counter pressure through that major defensive cooldown. I think that was a little bit of a play error. Unfortunately, they didn't get really punished for that, but I think never lucky. They can't be making those mistakes, especially later on in this game.
I would like to see Valido and Packrats kind of split up on that box so that at least one of them can be in line of sight of the enemy team. Valido and Packrats are playing too close to each other, and they can easily be line of sight. Formy jumps in, tries to get aggressive, but ends up leaping away from the target. Formy could have maybe gotten a kill here on Valido. They're still trying to pull more cooldowns. They do get Iron Bark. They're pursuing for more. They get peeled away by Packrats. Good positioning there. They do get Ticky's Gladiator's Medallion to get out of crowd control. That could be an opening later on. Valido just taking a ton of damage from this Blade Storm of Formy. 5 Blinks are trying to make a move here at 38% dampening, but I'm not sure if it's deep enough.
It's too soon, even with Mortal Strike on your team, to push through those Resto Druid Hots. But Colo actually tanks a full sheep. Tiki, in the meantime, getting low as well. He wants to continue this offensive push on Valido, who gets out of line of sight, casting those Elemental Shaman heals on himself. But Formy is able to reconnect. Tiki can't really push in right now. Colo needs to get in line of sight of Valido. Mind control coming in from Tiki. Valido getting lower. This is a scary moment. The Arcane Mage can spell steal those Hots. Colo has to play catch up. Does have the Iron Bark holding onto it. No, he uses it immediately. Doesn't want to mess around. Wants to stabilize Valido so he can get aggressive once again. Valido doesn't have the Tremor Totem, but unfortunately that fear from Tiki did break, so they weren't able to get too much pressure from that. Valido still low, and this is scary for Never Lucky pushing forward.
Yeah, Tiki the target of choice for Never Lucky, but that leaves Vaults and Formy open, and they're developing a lot of pressure. Polymorph snuck in there onto Colo. He can't afford to make these mistakes. There's a lot of damage. His composition is paying its weight in gold. They're going to nail a kill and finally put a point on the board against this Restoration Druid Menace. Discipline Priest finally figuring out
can do now that he's going to be doing some DPS, all tied up in this series. A lot of surprises from NA, a lot of compositional changes. Who is going to get themselves on match point?
Nice fear coming in from Formy. A little bit early, but really wants to break up that initial pressure. And Colo actually forced to run away very early on. Ports away, flying Serpent Kick. 5 Blinks has managed to find a way to get lots of pressure very early. Colo going to be pushing forward, wants to get that touch of Karma onto Tiki, but that being forced out so early isn't the greatest start for Never Lucky.
Fortunately, Valido really hasn't activated too many powerful cooldowns, and that barrier protecting Tiki will be fading here shortly. Colo saved his stun as well, right as that barrier's defense falls, and Valido's going to pull the trigger, summoning in that Abomination, the giant undead creature crushing this Discipline Priest. It's so difficult to escape. A Frost Nova from Vaults is able to hold that Abomination at bay, while Tiki desperately tries to recover. This is one of the most difficult compositions of Discipline Priest to heal through. Let's see how well he can do it. They do have good counter pressure on Colo. Basically, I'm wondering if they're listening to Zico's pre-game analysis. Just play aggressive and force the monk to run away. You don't really have any other option because your Discipline Priest simply can't escape these classes. Maledict gets activated. There's the stun lock. Tiki trinkets out and gets stunned on his trinket. This is almost going to be a kill, I believe, as Tiki barely hangs on. He's got nowhere to go. He's got nothing left in the tank to keep healing through it, and ultimately will get crushed under the weight of that Windwalker Death Knight. Perfect counter pick.
We'll see if Formy can prove me wrong.
All right, it is going to be on Formy to try to take away those cooldowns from Zach. The gates are now open. Never Lucky can send 5 Blinks home here.
You can see Vault's positioning forward to try and intercept the team and prevent them from getting to the Priest. They have to protect Tiki at all costs. Tiki actually pushing forward. Maybe he wants to get a Psychic Scream. He's a little bit cautious of going right now. He's going to go right next to the Windwalker. Very dangerous maneuver, but they do manage to pull a powerful defensive cooldown from Colo. But now Tiki, he's involved with the fight, and he's really not going to get an opportunity to get away. He's going to rely on Formy and Vaults to save him. Both Cyclone and Polymorph quite effective at denying damage, but they're using these crowd control effects before they stun Tiki, which means now they will have free reign during this Hammer of Justice, which Tiki immediately responds to, trades that barrier, having seen Valido mix up his strategy. He actually went all in with his cooldowns this game rather than spacing them out. Tiki's trade is quite effective at absorbing all of that damage. However, Colo has saved his cooldowns aggressively, so the team of Never Lucky still splitting it up quite effectively. Zach is going to get aggressive here with the Avenging Crusader. It's effectively 3 damage dealers onto Tiki. How is he going to deal with it, Ven?
He's going to get stunned and ultimately probably taken down in this moment. He gets stunned, potentially into a restun. Pain Suppression was used. That was the last line of defense he has, but now with the Maledict trinkets coming in, what is Tiki going to do? A lot of interrupts coming in from Valido and Colo. This is going to be so difficult for him to survive. Hammer of Justice is going to be up shortly. shortly for Zach as well. If he can nail another Hammer of Justice onto Tiki, I don't think there's any way he can survive. Colo and Valito, they have way too much uptime. There is no counter pressure. Just a matter of time before Tiki goes down. There is the full leg sweep. Valito building up his damage. Whirling Dragon Punch closes out the game, and Never Lucky will be able to run down Tiki and close out the series 3-1.
Sometimes lucky. Composition's definitely going to pay dividends here. They're going to be able to lock this one up nice and quick. Moving forward on the feed versus the fake Zebras. We're all tied up 1-1. Who is going to find themselves on match point? Who is going to get a little bit further into this tournament? Keep in mind, folks, we're doing a brand new thing. You have just entered in the middle of history. The longest series that has ever been played in Battle for Azeroth.